It's the Fellowship of the Geek Show, a weekly podcast about comics, the comic book industry, and other geek pop culture. Music courtesy of Manny the Martyr. And now, on with the show!
Hey there, everybody. It's the Fellowship of the Geeks podcast. My name is Thomas Chick, and joining me for this episode is Mike Barlow.
Hey, gang.
Les Webster.
Hello.
And Liz Newman.
Hello, everybody.
How are you guys doing?
Awesome. Yay.
Freaking great.
Great and freak. No, wait.
A great freak.
You got your note cards backwards there, Les.
Oh, jeez, of course I did.
Hope everybody out there is doing okay. So what's been going on in your corner of the galaxy?
Oh, gosh. Well, I'm still stuck on music documentaries. And so this week's winner was a documentary called Mr. Dynamite, The Rise of James Brown. This was a really good documentary about a really interesting subject. And I say that in a I wish he was a nicer guy sort of way. I guess in a way it's not terribly surprising in a way, but yeah, you want to think of your of I don't want to say my favorite, but you want to think of your celebrities as all being wonderful and happy, and everybody loves them, and they all get along with everybody great. Not necessarily the case with James Brown. He's apparently a very tough guy to work for, and so I mean, has had a long and storied career, obviously, and has done a lot of amazing things. This was not always the happiest documentary to watch. It was a little weird at times. He got very into politics, like in the 60s and 70s, like in the late 60s, early 70s, and it was just very not you're not necessarily used to seeing and hearing that kind of detail about that sort of thing for a musician. So I mean, in its own way, it's very interesting. But not everybody they talked to, and they talked to several people from the band and other people they work with and stuff like that. And there was a lot of mixed opinions. They were all very gung ho about how talented he was, or is I don't even remember, and a lot of the stuff that he did musically, and they were a little less sparkly happy about some of the other stuff they talked about. And I mean, it went into some detail about some not pleasant stuff, which I give it a lot of credit for. Like I said, it was a very good documentary about a very interesting and diverse subject.
Cool.
Mm.
It is definitely worth watching. Be prepared that it's not all about the music. But, I mean, that's okay, too. It's telling his story, not necessarily the story of the music.
Is that on Prime?
That is on Netflix.
Cool.
Okay. It does sound interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I have I've been reading some older comics online. I guess a lot of it's what we're going to be talking about a little bit later, so I won't get too much into it. But I did want to mention,
huh? Cool.
Right, homework. But in case people didn't know, there's a website called Read Comic Online, not comics, just Comic Online, and they have like a lot of the older comics that you can't find, issues for anymore. So not that I'm a digital snob, because I read a lot of digital stuff, but if you're ever curious, just give it a look. Like I said, I saw a lot of Jack Kirby's work on there, Darwin stuff's on there. So, like I said, a lot of older comics. The ones I was reading was from 1969, and it's pretty much page for page what it was. So that was pretty interesting. But today, I went to the movies. Yay! I went with a friend for my birthday, but we went and saw Toy Story 4. I have to admit I cried. Tim Allen, before the movie had come out, he posted that when he delivered the last line of the movie, he wouldn't say who. He says, but I couldn't look him in the eyes and say, he knew that was it. That was the end. And I have to say that it was an emotional part in the movie. But I have to say the most emotional part was actually a trailer, once again. One of my favorite books is becoming a movie, and I had no idea that they were even thinking about making it a movie. But it's called The Art of Racing in the Rain. And I happened to find the book because one of our local comic book stores, they did a banned book. I guess it was a month that they celebrated all the books that have been banned. And this was one of the books that had been banned, which after reading the book and crying all the way through the book, I couldn't understand how something so beautiful and moving could be seen as, worthy to being banned. So it was really awesome that they're thinking about making a movie out of it. And I cannot remember the guy's name, but he was on Gilmore Girls. He was on This Is Us. Jesse Ventalmo or something like that, something or another like that. He's the lead character, and I think it's just going to be amazing. I mean, I was crying in parts of the trailer because reading the book, you know what's happening and what's going to happen, and the dog they got to play the part, you just automatically love. So should be good. But if you haven't seen Toy Story 4 yet, if you're older like I am and you have kids that kind of grew up watching this, it's kind of emotional from that standpoint. Especially very beginning, they show like a montage of Andy with his toys, and as a mom, I'm sitting there thinking, wow, that was my little boy. He was about that age too, and so. But it was good. It wasn't as good as the first two, but it was still pretty good. So I would definitely, just for the nostalgia of it, you have to go see it because we've been told this is it. This is the last one. Yeah. Well,
isn't that what they say with the third one too?
The way that they ended this one, if they do another one, it won't have. This was their end game. I'll just say that. They lost someone important. So
Complete with finger snap.
Yep. It would be hard to go. I could see some of the others, especially with some of the newer characters that they've introduced, do something different. That's been pretty good. No rants this week. I got that out of my system.
Yeah, you got that on pre-show.
Uh-huh.
You're welcome.
The broadcast is still young.
Yeah, we're not done yet, right? Agreed.
Okay, Les?
Well, speaking of still young, what you got, Les?
Yeah.
I'm neither, but I too went to the movies this past week. I went to see Yesterday on Thursday night. Highly recommend it, especially if you're a Beatles fan. The music is really well done.
Who?
No, the Beatles. The Who is another group.
That was a different movie.
What?
And then today I went to see the Friday Night Double Feature by Christopher Minn. So
Cool.
that was quite the thrill too. And of course he was in attendance. So got to talk to him afterwards.
Nice.
Most enjoyable young man, and he comes across with some of the most phenomenal stories. You've heard us talk about him before, and I'm looking forward to his next two projects. He does have one, not one of these next two, but he does have one in planning stage about being in Dallas, because he has always said that he is thoroughly liked and he enjoys coming to here. Nope, that wasn't me. Coming to the Dallas site because he is greeted so well. So we may get a film out of him based in the Dallas area, which would be a lot of fun.
Sweet.
Cool.
Alrighty. Les and I went to a convention this past weekend.
Ooh.
And this was my first convention in 5 years.
It's amazing how much easier it is to go to a con when you don't have to work at a comic shop, huh?
Yeah. It's kind of hard to go when you're always working the entire weekend. But yeah, it was fun. It was great seeing friends I hadn't seen in a long time. You know, the only way I've been able to be in contact with them was through social media, and just the excitement and just seeing what everybody brought into the sale and all that. It was fun. We sat in with the Q&A for Peter David, which was kind of fun. We got in a little bit late, so they were talking about the Stan Lee graphic novel that he and Colleen Dorn did.
Oh, cool.
So it was fun. It was nice. It was nice being back in that environment again, and I'll go. I'm ready to go again.
Cool.
Of course, there's one almost every weekend now, so it's
Right. Just decide where you're willing to go and
yeah, exactly.
how often.
Yeah,
Oy.
and how much money you have to be able to pay for all this.
Oh, that's the tricky part right there.
Yep.
They have plasma banks.
Oh God. We're not espousing selling bodily fluids on this show, Liz.
Okay. Wrong show.
Dang.
Before we get into this week's discussion, wanted to remind everybody, especially you geeks in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, that we have our monthly meet and gab coming up. It's Saturday, July 13th at 7 p.m. And we'll be meeting at Wing City once again, and that's located at 1456 Beltline Road, Suite 120. That's in Garland. And the zip is 75044. We have all the information on our website. You can go to www.thefellowshipofthegeeks.net and click on the events tab. You'll see all that. We also have a Facebook event set up. So if you're following us on Facebook, and if you're not, please follow us. But if you're interested in going, just click on the event tab there and say whether you're interested or if you're going. We would love to see you. Great food. We always have some interesting conversations, and there's usually about 4 or 5 going on at the same time. But y'all are more than welcome to come join us and have some fun.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a hoot.
It's a hoot.
A hoot and a half.
All righty.
Would that be an oot? It's a hoot.
It's a hoot.
Hoot, hoot.
Yes. See what you did? Anyway, 2019 marks the 50th anniversary of the introduction of Vampirella it's hard to believe she's been around that long, but I kind of remember her when I was young. And the thing that was kind of interesting, kind of doing a little preparation for this week's discussion, I didn't realize that it was Trina Robbins that created the outfit, and she's given co-creation credit. Also created by Forrest J. Ackerman, who, of course, if you're not familiar with that name, oh man. Oh man.
Google him, because
Google.
he had his hand in a lot of stuff. A lot of sci-fi and fantasy stuff back in the 50s, 60s, 70s.
And if you ever heard of the magazine Famous Monsters of Filmland, you have him to thank.
Yep.
But we figured we'd take a little time and talk about Vampirella and how she has, due to her longevity, and just kind of go over her history a little bit with this week's episode. So, who would like to go first?
I guess I can give a little bit of detail.
Go for it.
Well, this past week I've read quite a bit of Vampirella, but I think this was one that I always chose Zenescope titles over, and I'm kind of surprised she's not a part of that world. It's, but what I
there's a very simple reason why she's not. It's because Dynamite owns her.
Well,
not
yeah.
Zenescope, but yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That she fits in.
Sure,
with
she would fit in perfectly.
Yeah, with those over there. But what I always found interesting about her is she's Lilith's daughter. And for people who aren't familiar with Lilith, Lilith was Adam's first wife. Adam and Eve was Adam's first wife, but she refused to submit to him. She pretty much was like, no, I can wear the pants or the fig leaf. And so she was kicked out of Eden. And during the time that she was kicked out of Eden, she made a lot of monsters and, birthed a lot of monsters and everything else. Well, once she sat back and was kind of like, oh, wait a minute, what did I do? I'm out of paradise pretty much. She comes back and decides to try to have more kids to kind of, fight what she's done and, everything else, which is where Lilith comes from. Or, I'm sorry, Vampirella comes from. Vampirella is actually the third child. She had a set of twins that didn't want to be good. Which we read a little bit about them. And then the second child, from what I've read, I was reading the stuff from 69. She's only made maybe 1 or 2 appearances in the comics, so she's talked about but not really seen a lot. But Vampirella was the one who's the good one, and she is taking care of all of the evil, I guess her mom released. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, essentially she becomes a monster hunter.
Yeah.
And monsters is that historically in that timeline, or that history, they come from Lilith.
Yeah. So she's kind of a Dexter. Right? She kills all the bad people, But which essentially she's vampire because she does need blood to sustain herself. But from where they're from, you didn't have to kill people for blood.
Oh, yeah, it rivers. It ran in rivers.
Yeah. So
and that gets histories kind of crossed up a little bit, in all fairness, but yeah. Because there's some there have been some rewrites on Vampirella's history a few times along the way.
Ah.
Yeah, the Lilith thing was actually not the first history.
No?
No, she was an alien.
Ah,
she was
okay.
from a planet called Draculon, which was a planet of people who lived in cities, and the rivers flowed blood, and that's how they lived, and there was some sort of plague type thing that happened, and she was sent here to scout for a new home for all the people, all the survivors, essentially.
Okay.
So yeah, I don't know, I'm not going to go so far as to say that was the original history, but it was at least an early one.
Yeah.
I mean, originally, she was created as a horror hostess. She was the Vampirella. The original Vampirella book was created as a companion's not the right word, but it to be published along with books like Creepy and Eerie.
Huh.
And so they created Vampirella as kind of somewhere between the Crypt Keeper and Elvira, basically.
That's what popped into my head when you said that was the Crypt Keeper.
So yeah, so essentially you could almost, I don't know that you could prove historically, but you could pretty easily assume that she's a Vampira ripoff. Just like a lot of people in that, in the same sense that Elvira was, although Elvira came later. But
yeah,
given the time frame, it would be very easy to assume that Forrest Ackerman was remembering Vampira from the mid-50s.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
yep.
So the whole vampire thing kind of came along as her story got built, and given that she's in a couple of panels in each of her own books, it takes a little longer to build a story that way, but
Yeah.
And then she got, I guess, popular enough, or they liked her enough that they started actually giving her history and storylines and such.
That's pretty cool.
That's the way it is, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, she got mired in legal issues for a while.
Yeah.
Because the original publisher went out of business, and so then there were some legal issues as to who really had the rights, I believe, was how that was rolled out. I'm not sure how that went down. But yeah. So there was stuff published, but not much for a while.
Yeah.
That was pretty much she lost the 80s because of that, basically. Or there was like I don't remember exactly when the time frame was. It was right in that. Maybe it was.
You're about right.
Maybe it was the 90s. I'm thinking of. No, there's stuff in the 90s too. But yeah, there's not nearly. She was not constantly in print. We'll put it that way.
Yeah, I'd noticed there was like 9-year gap, I believe it was. Let's see if I can find that.
Yeah, and then I think what really broke it or got it back to where she could be published regularly was when Dynamite bought her out back in 2010. And she's been pretty much in print ever since with new stories.
So it was 83 to 99.
Sounds about right. Yeah, because I think Harris publications were the ones that were putting out stuff. But as you said, there was questions about who actually owned the rights and all that.
Yeah. The 83 to 99 was when Harris.
Harris.
At least
got
it was assumed that they had bought it. I think 99 was when the trouble started. I'm not sure.
Yep.
I'm not sure Harris. Did Harris?
Yeah, I'm trying to look at my resources too.
Yeah, they weren't. They pretty much weren't doing anything after that point. I think. I don't know if that's because they had gone out of business or if they just weren't publishing Vampirella stuff at the time. But yeah, until Dynamite got their hands on her, there was a lull.
2010 is when Dynamite acquired the rights from Vampirella.
Yep.
And then the lawsuit was in 99, but it looks like they released a couple of one-shots in between there.
Yeah. But once Dynamite kind of got it all nailed down, I don't know if they just like threw enough money at them to make them happy or what, but they effectively bought the rights, and
Hmm.
it's been pretty consistent ever since.
Yep.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to read a lot of that older stuff either. I would like to get hold of some of that. I'm definitely going to look into that website you mentioned before.
It's pretty neat because it's like you said. There's like maybe 8 stories in each comic, and hers is always the first.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
it is-
hers is the featured story.
Mhm.
So they would trot it out first.
Of course, it's all horror-related stories that she's with.
Well, sure.
Right.
Draculina, that was her name. I'd forgot. I couldn't remember.
Her original name?
Her twin sister.
Oh,
Her evil twin sister.
She was a blonde, wasn't she?
Yes, she was. She showed up in a story not too long ago.
Hmm.
I'm trying to remember what it was, but drawing a blank. Are there any other interesting tidbits about history?
I don't know. Are there?
if you don't pay attention, it will repeat itself.
Okay.
You know, one thing that surprised me when I was looking up some information on her is there wasn't a lot of controversy to be found around her. And for 1969 and some of these covers, it's kind of surprising.
I think that contrary to what people wanted to believe, I think that maybe the comics industry was just better at kind of keeping that stuff separate back then. I don't know.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, it's not like Vampirella was the only one doing that. There were other covers of other books that were like that. I mean, and all the
Right.
stink about the horror books that was 15 years old at this point by the time Vampirella came out. I mean, that was all from the mid-50s, and so obviously the books still survived somehow
Yeah.
in some form. There were still horror and war and darker topic books all through that time period. It's just somehow they managed to keep it segregated. I don't know. Would be an interesting study.
That would be.
Not to flash too hard back to our Seduction of the Innocent episode, but
Right.
you know, it would be interesting to look at publication information from the next 20 years just to see where it all goes, see how that works, if such information even exists. But yeah, Vampirella.
Les?
Well, I picked up Vampirella #1 when it first came out, and I was intrigued. I guess it was just before I started college. So it was interesting to me because it was put out by Warren. Was it Warren Publishing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was put out by Warren, who had, like Mike said, Creepy and Eerie, which were 2 magazines that I definitely picked up all the time. This one appeared with the cover by Frazetta, which automatically draws you to the comic. And it was interesting because the premise, like has been said, was she was the hostess of this comic book. And she didn't get her own real stories, strong stories, until 8-9 months in. That's when they kind of turned and said, okay, she's going to be our main character. She's going to have her own stories. And that's where it flourished. Liz, at that time, there wasn't any hubbub about the covers or the items inside, because the ban on comic books happened a decade earlier, or even more, maybe 15 years earlier, for Seduction of the Innocent. We had gotten past that, and it's not that we were a liberal time, but the time was that things were accepted a little easier. You had the Summer of Love just prior to this. You had, well, Woodstock was that year too, was it not?
Yep.
69, yeah.
Yeah, 69.
So, and that was just a month or so before the comic book, or the book of Vampirella was not published, but it was the date on the cover. So Warren, what I thought moved well to put this one out during that Summer of Love, and kind of rode the coattails of it at that time. So we were more accepting. The stories were fascinating because they had some of the best artists doing work there. You had everything from Jack Davis to Reed Crandall. And from those stories, you can really enjoy what was in the minds of the writers at that time. I just thoroughly enjoyed it, and it was, I want to say 35 cents for the first issue, which, yeah, that put a kink in my pocketbook, but it was something I did look forward to after that. This was another publication which was diverse. It was definitely an anthology. So I just accepted it readily, and congratulate them on setting the standard for this, because it was ended up being the basis of a lot of different publications, including the one by Pamela Anderson. Do you remember that in the cartoon that was on like MTV or something at that time? But that
Is that the Stripperella thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because not that she was a vampire, but it was just.
Well, there's an influence there for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll sit back and go, yeah, it's good stuff. Keep it going.
Yeah, I still wish we had anthologies anymore. It's such a great way to farm talent, honestly, and I don't know why we don't do it more. Other than they're a pain in the butt to put together, I kind of get that part, but it just seems like it would be so much easier than some of the other ways that we do that these days. I don't know.
I agree.
I'm a dreamer. What can I say?
I think part of it is it's kind of hard to sell. You know, to a degree, because I mean, I agree with you, because I mean, you know, 4 or 5 different stories. You know, you have, you know, you can go different ways, and you know, you don't like this story, but hey, this next story might be pretty good. So yeah, that kind of thing. But you know, I don't know. It just, that's what I have been told. So by people who know more about this kind of stuff than me. So.
Oh no, I believe it. It just kind of, I don't know. I wish that the best, what I assume is the best-selling anthology series going on is in the freaking UK. I mean, 2000 AD is pretty much the only one that is anywhere near consistent anyway, and it's been coming out for years and years and years. People buy that. Now, admittedly, they run stories with higher profile creators too, but you could do that here. Anyway, sorry. I feel like I'm derailing things now. But
Didn't Alan Moore do a series that was kind of like a series of haunted story or horror stories.
Alan Moore's career has been a series of horror stories.
Right. There was, I want to say there was like 2 or 3 stories in each issue. Was it like Cinema Purgatory or... God, I can see the covers, but I can't. I want to say it was something like that. It was like Cinema P something.
Cinema Purgatorio?
I think that's it. But it kind of dealt with like different monsters and stuff. So not as, there were a little bit longer stories because like I said, I think there was like 2 or 3 different stories. But each one had a different theme to them.
Yeah, apparently that's ending. That's been running for a little while. I would say Avatar Press has been doing that.
I think it was.
Yeah, and that's coming to an end.
So it was good while it lasted.
Right. The fact that it only ran 18 issues tells you that, well, clearly it didn't sell as well as they were hoping because they're stopping it.
See, this wasn't like a monthly kind of comic, though. It was like once every couple of months, I'm wanting to say. Or maybe it was supposed to be a monthly, and that's why it's ending.
Well, that's more information than we have on our humble show. But yeah, certainly makes sense.
But it had some pretty big names in it, too.
Yeah. Yeah. It's got some pretty big names. I'm looking at a list here. Holy cow. But yeah, Vampirella.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm like Mikey. I would love to read the older stuff because I vaguely remember seeing the magazines when I was younger. Because I mean, look at those covers.
Right. Not too much younger, obviously, but yeah.
Yeah. But she's always been a kind of interesting character, and there's always and even, however they change her, whether it's more of a sci-fi bent or more of a horror bent or some combination of the two, she's had some pretty cool stories, very interesting stories. And she's a character you can really like.
Sink your teeth into?
Yeah, I wasn't going to go there.
We knew it was coming.
Would it be our show if we didn't?
I couldn't.
Well, honestly, I'm surprised you didn't say any less.
I couldn't resist. Had to go for the cheap vampire joke. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, most of what I've seen has been from the Dynamite era, which has been like the last 9-10 years. One of the things I've enjoyed is that they've used a wide variety of different creators. I mean, they're pulling people in from different industries. They're pulling in. I mean, they used Nancy Collins, who had written fantasy novels, and I want to say she was. Last time I saw anything from her, she was working on like a mystery novel. They used Paul Cornell, who's basically a sci-fi writer. He's done some work with like Doctor Who.
Yeah.
And so there's just been a really interesting kind of mix of different styles and different. I mean, honestly, different success levels of writers, and it's kept things, I think, very interesting. I mean, you almost never know what you're going to getting into with if you pick up a new Vampirella arc. It's just you just can't be sure because it depends very much on who's writing it, and you may not have ever heard of the writer before, or it may be somebody you're familiar with from somewhere else, from outside of comics. And I think it has added an interesting layer to her, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
It does. When, oh my goodness, she's been in how many crossovers?
They've done some crossovers. She's in a crossover right now. A very, very different crossover. The Red Sonja and Vampirella versus Betty and Veronica.
Yeah.
That's still going. That's ongoing. That's going right now. That's okay. I'm not saying it's an ongoing series. I'm saying it's currently running.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if you heard, but they're going to continue the Sonja Vampirella. They're going to get their own book together.
That's very cool.
That is pretty cool.
They are an interesting pairing, that's for sure. And I mean, completely different worlds.
Yes.
I mean, not put too fine a point on it. I mean, very different worlds, and those two characters work well together. They're actually kind of similar in a lot of ways.
They are. Oh, and two strong females put together. That's kind of wow.
Mm-hmm. Gotta love that.
Yeah.
So is Gail Simone still doing Red Sonja?
Not right now, no.
Okay.
She had a pretty dang successful run with her.
So much so that they're actually putting together an omnibus of that material.
Cool.
Wow.
Yep. There were when she was doing that, there were a couple of crossovers then too. There was one specifically, I can't remember the name of it. I think they actually ran it for 2 arcs. There was a Red Sonja Conan crossover that she co-wrote with Jim Zub.
Wow.
Which, that was entertaining, to say the least.
Yeah.
I would not be opposed to Gail Simone writing Vampirella. That would be cool.
Mm-hmm. Has anyone seen the movie?
I saw that there was a movie, but I haven't seen the movie.
It was straight to video. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. Nobody saw the movie. That was kind of a trick question, man.
I kind of learned my lesson watching the Lady Death one. That if you like a character, don't watch their movie. Don't watch the movie.
You got to kind of pay attention to who's producing it and who's directing it and that kind of thing. And yeah, you got to be careful with that sort of thing because you can really get your heart broken fast. Big
time. Yeah.
And for some reason I remember hearing that it was coming out way back when. I mean, that was long before I ever got into Vampirella in the first place. So I remember hearing about it. It was probably at a comic convention way back then, or a sci-fi convention, one or the other. At the time, I had no interest at all in it. At this point, I don't know if I could force myself to watch it, just for the same reason that you're talking about. It's just that I hesitate to say that it can't be good, but in all reality, it probably can't be.
Yeah.
Just because it would have gotten a wider release if it was. I mean, not getting a wide release is not a budgetary issue. That's not how that works, and so it didn't get out there.
It's 96.
Yeah.
Huh.
If anybody out there has seen it, let us know. Let us know whether we should try to track it down. I don't know if that's even possible at this point, but it'd be interesting to know.
Not that we're going to run out and watch it, but...
right.
Oh, you can, Les.
I'm a little surprised you didn't see it. Jeez.
Yeah, really.
You were there at the beginning. Oh,
you're getting in deeper there, pal.
I was going to say, you ain't even going to grace that with a response, huh? I don't blame you, but, you know. Yep. It's interesting to see how the stories have changed over the years and how kind of like I said, her background has been, we'll generously say tweaked several times over the years.
True.
It's kind of interesting to see how they've played with that. I've seen stories where they've dumped her into the past and where they've kicked her into the future, and I mean, there's one arc. Actually, I think it was more than one arc, but there was one storyline where she's essentially working for the Vatican, hunting down former Nazi mad scientist types, and she gets kicked into the future, she's fighting this supposedly godlike being in like 1,000 years in the future. It's yeah. One of the arcs, she kind of sort of accidentally kills like the sire of this huge vampire family and essentially becomes queen of the vampires for a while.
Yeah.
I also kind of like that they're not afraid to just sort of go, okay, we're on with it to the next thing and forget all that stuff that just happened. They don't mind rewriting history with her a little bit from time to time, which I like that they kind of can take that liberty a little bit and have a little bit of freedom to create something new every time. It kind of shows off her versatility as a character.
Yeah, don't look for continuity
in
a lot of the stories.
Not
because they will shift on you at moment's notice.
Yep. All it takes is a change in creative team, and boom, it's an entire. You don't know what you're getting, which is cool in its own way. There are some characters that you just can't get away with that for. You'll never see Marvel or DC doing that, but Dynamite has had no problem doing it, and it has worked really well for them.
Yep.
I mean, and honestly, I think that mentality is kind of why Dynamite can get away with doing some of the crossover craziness they do from time to time. It's like the Red Sonja, Vampirella, and Archies. I mean, really? It sounds crazy, but I was looking at some of those issues. There's a story there, and it's actually a fairly interesting one. I mean, and are Betty and Veronica kind of out of their league? Yeah, of course they are. But they should be. And so it works in its own way.
It does present strong characters, and that's the good part of it. Let's don't just cover it up because they're high schoolers or from another planet or something. You forge ahead. Make things viable.
Right. What would Red Sonja do if she were forced to go to high school? I don't know, but it's sure as hell going to be interesting finding out by reading the book, you know?
Yep.
You definitely have the fear by the jocks that she's going to lop their heads or something.
If not, just flat out join the football team.
Yeah.
Right.
And prove to be really good at taking out quarterbacks or whatever. But yeah, strangely enough, she has no fear. But yeah, it opens up a lot of possibilities when you just kind of throw caution to the wind in terms of continuity. It's just, I mean, are you going to annoy people that want their Vampirella to be the same character every time? Sure, but you know what? I mean, given her roots, I'm not sure that's important. I mean, she's got a lot of history and she's got a lot of stories under her belt. And do they have to follow in a specific order? No. Why bother? I can understand Dynamite not wanting to work that hard at the whole editing thing. It's not important. Tell the story. Tell a good story. That's all you really have to do. And after almost 10 years, they're getting pretty good at telling a Vampirella story. Those Dynamite folks.
True. Very true.
I agree. It's been a fun read. No matter what they do, it's and you're right. They kind of go. They definitely go a different approach with each mini series, which is cool. And I kind of like it. It kind of keeps it fresh. So, yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah.
Yep, it gives the creators a chance to do something interesting.
Yep.
Every time, something different, something interesting. Yep, they're even releasing a hardcover of one of the more recent ones, the one that just wrapped up, the Roses for the Dead. Is that what?
Yeah.
They're doing a hardcover version of that for the anniversary, for the 50th anniversary. So that's coming out soon, if not this week. I'm not sure. Is that this week or is that?
Yeah, I think it's this week. So the timing's actually really good.
Yeah.
July 10th.
July 10th. That's this week.
That's this week. Wow. That kind of lucked out.
Yeah. The initial the publication date of the first issue that she was in was July 17th, 1969. So, they should have held off one more week. Come on, man.
Yeah,
that would have been awesome.
Oh, well.
Especially since it would have fell on the 17th.
Yeah.
Poor planning.
I know. Jerks. What are they thinking? No.
Who knows? They may push it off a week.
They could stall it. You never know.
They're known to kind of push those deadlines on this.
Yep. And that was actually it was a really beautifully drawn book too.
Yes.
It was an interesting story, don't get me wrong, but it was really pretty.
Listener, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah.
There you go.
Some amazing covers for sure.
Yep.
And the interior art was great too.
Okay. Well, any final thoughts before we wrap things up and take a quick break?
No.
Nope. If you're into vampire stories and gosh, stories about almost anything else, starting with Vampirella is not a bad way to go.
There you go. And on that note, we are going to take a break and be back with our weekly picks. And we're back. It's time for our weekly picks, and leading off is Liz.
Alrighty, for my first pick, I'm going with one from Marvel Comics. It's Wolverine and Captain America, Weapon Plus. This one seems kind of interesting because, of course, we know, the whole super soldier Captain America story, and we know Wolverine, Weapon X and that kind of stuff. And we also know that during this time, Deadpool was kind of like a oops. So this one should be interesting. They say that we'll finally learn their secret history behind their origins, which I kind of thought we knew, but I guess we don't know, and Marvel's about to tell us.
Well, sure, of course. Why not?
And that's the way it is until they go back and say, no, this is actually what happened.
Right.
Then they'll go back and say, well, no, actually this is what happened. And then they'll change it again and again. And no, none of it actually happened. It was all in Deadpool's dream, yes.
It was Earth 500.
Holy crap.
Oh, God. I was worried a little bit ago about starting the continuity rant, but now this is what's going to trigger it, not what we were talking about before.
Yeah, should be an interesting one. Like I said, I'm curious to see how they all link, or, one story told with all of them. And they said including some surprises, so there may be a few that we didn't know was part of this program or project or.
Cool.
Yeah.
I would do the dun dun dun, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, because when I think of the Super Soldier program, Canada is where I go. But,
Is that a boot?
Had to explain the Yeti thing somehow, but anyway.
Yep. Alrighty. Mike.
Oh, I'm next. Okay.
Yeah, you're next.
Woo! Okay, so my first pick is a Dark Horse book, and this requires a little bit of explanation, but that's okay. This is the first volume of a collection of the adaptation of H.P. Lovecraft's At the Mountains of Madness by Japanese creator Go Tanabe. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. I'm probably a little bit off, but that's okay. But this, I'm a longtime Lovecraft fan, and so I'm always kind of curious to see adaptations of his work, and especially in comics, because it gets really interesting. There's a lot of wild stuff out there, and I'm really kind of looking forward to seeing how this looks. Should be really fun, especially if you're into Lovecraft. There's some really pretty stuff here.
Does sound interesting.
Should be pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm with you, Mike. I want to see how they handle this, because Lovecraft is a tough item to make room for.
Yeah, his stuff can be really hard to adapt, and it has been done poorly many times over the years in all the cases of a lot of his stuff. And I mean, when it's done well, it is amazing. And so that's what I'm hoping is the case here, which I'm thinking Dark Horse is pulling this from Japan. It must be good.
Alrighty. I am next, and for my first choice, I'm going with a new title from Image called Unearth. It's written by Cullen Bunn and Kyle Strahm, with art by Baldomir Rivas. And it is about a group of scientists who've gone to Mexico to investigate this attack of flesh-warping disease. And they go to a cave, and that's when all hell breaks loose. I mean, it's Cullen Bunn, so it's gonna be interesting. It's gonna be dark, and it's gonna be fun. So,
Yep.
I mean, his last title from Image was Regression, which was a hell of a book.
Great read.
More ways than one.
Yes. So I'm definitely interested in this one.
Yep.
That's cool.
It is.
I'm in.
Yeah. Alrighty, Les.
All right, my first choice comes from DC. They are issuing a book of 20 prints of Frank Cho's covers in a set that measures 12 by 16. Cho is a phenomenal cover artist. He's also a very good artist in his own series, such as Liberty Meadows. But in this, you've got posters of Harley Quinn, Wonder Woman, and so many others. I'm looking forward to this. I want to know if they're going to have, wasn't his the band cover for Wonder Woman at one time? Is that right, Thomas?
I don't remember it right now.
But I'm ready for this one because he does exquisite work, and it's mainly a lot of ink line. So, yeah, I'm ready for it.
He's one of those that when you see his covers, you know it's him.
Yep.
True.
Cool.
Yeah, that is pretty awesome.
Yep. Alrighty, Liz.
Well, speaking of pretty awesome, I was kind of laughed at for this one, but this one's coming from Dark Horse, and it's Disney's Dracula starring Mickey Mouse. This is, of course, Mickey Mouse's take on Bram Stoker's Dracula. I don't know. They've redone other classics. Hamlet, golly, there was quite a few of them that they've done in the classic literature, Moby Dick, Treasure Island, that kind of thing. So this one should be pretty good. I've liked the way they handled the other ones. Maybe it's the overload of Disney movies I've been watching, but...
Maybe.
Right, maybe. This should be pretty good, though.
I'm curious.
Yeah.
If nothing else, that's one of my favorite books, so I'm interested in seeing how they adapt that to their usual group of characters.
Yeah. Should be pretty good.
Yeah.
No.
Alrighty, Mike. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to make a snarky comment about how I'm looking forward to seeing their version of Macbeth as well, but they've already done Hamlet. I mean, why not, you know?
They have done Hamlet. And Frankenstein.
You know, I can actually believe Frankenstein. That's fine, because, well, I mean, we've seen that done well in its own way. But,
yeah,
I don't know. Like I said, I'm curious.
Me too.
Alrighty, Mikey.
Oh, I'm up. Okay. My second pick is from Image, and I am picking Reaver, number 1. This is a new book, obviously, because it's a number 1. And it is a fantasy story. It's set in a fantasy world where there's been a war going on for 200 years over a newly discovered continent. Well, newly, 200 years, and so they're on this continent. They have the explorers have discovered this horrific evil thing, and they're afraid that it's going to destroy the world, and so they put together a team of 6 diverse, interesting characters to go try to stop it, to go defeat the evil and save the world. So this sounds cool to me, you know. This is kind of right up my alley. I love the dark fantasy thing, so I'm gonna check it out.
Interesting.
That one did look pretty good.
Alrighty, I'm up next, and for my second choice, I'm picking a title that you may have heard about recently, in the last few months. This is from Ahoy Comics, and it is Second Coming, written by Mark Russell and art by Richard Pace. This is a story about Jesus Christ basically sharing a apartment with a superhero, kind of a clone of Superman, that kind of thing. And it kind of has kind of like the Odd Couple kind of vibe here. This should be fun. I mean, this is the title that was dropped by DC, and Ahoy Comics said, "Sure, we'll publish it." So I'm glad it's still going to come out. I know this is going to be controversial for some people, but I think it's going to be fun.
Yep, it's got some possibilities.
The Amanda Connor cover is worth just a look at. Let's try this. Let's pick it up and try it out.
Yep.
Yeah.
Alrighty, Les.
My second choice comes from T-Pub. This is written by Neil Gibson and Mike Gordon, illustrated by Eseoke Ebewanda. This comic is Lucky Man. It's number 4, and this is the story of Harry Clayton, a detective who is unwittingly granted the power to control luck. This is based on a TV series, and it kind of intrigues me to see how this man manipulates the comings and goings of fortune for himself and others. I'm in on it just to try it out, see what this brings to light.
Yeah.
Sounds pretty cool.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And our honorable mention this week is...
Our honorable mention this week is kind of a crossover. I mean, it's coming out through Dark Horse, but DC had a hand in it for sure. This is the crossover that some of us, at least, have been waiting for a little while. This is a crossover between Black Hammer and Justice League. This is going to be fun because the Black Hammer is a very different superhero world from the DC universe, and I am really curious to see how they. I mean, clearly they're going to have some sort of dimensional warp thing that brings the two groups together, but to see these two teams work together, man, I don't know if Superman can handle this level of darkness. You know, it's gonna be fun.
Yep. Definitely be interesting. Alrighty. Any special mentions or shout-outs this week?
Not me.
No.
Sorry, nothing here.
I do want to take a couple of moments to thank everybody. I mean, I do this every week anyway, but I just do a special shout-out to all of y'all for supporting this little podcast. We just passed 5,000 downloads recently, and that's a nice milestone. That's something I wasn't sure how. I figured it would take us a lot longer to get there. So we do appreciate your support week in and week out. It's because of y'all enjoying what we're doing that y'all keep coming back. So thank y'all very, very much.
And thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
You like us. You really like us.
Well, not after that.
Ow.
All right, on that note, we'll do our regular shout-outs, and we'll thank all of y'all again. First off, Pop Goes the Culture for allowing us to be part of their podcast network. If you check our show notes, we'll have a link there where you can check out some of the other podcasts that are part of this awesome network. So thank you guys for your support as always. And of course, the fine folks that make up Potter Family on Twitter for spreading the word of the fellowship. We highly recommend y'all go check out their shows. And the easiest way to do that is to go to Twitter. You don't necessarily have to have an account. And just do a search, hashtag Potter Family. That's all one word. And just scroll all the way down. And whatever catches your fancy, just click on that link, download that episode, and have some fun. Thank you guys for your support. Manny the Martyr for supplying the music to our podcast. In our show notes, we'll have a link to some of their music that y'all can listen to. Thank you guys for allowing us to use some of your incredible music. And finally, you dear listener, thank you for downloading and listening to today's episode. We appreciate your support as always. We would love to hear from you. If you have any feedback, any comment, question, complaint, suggestion, observation, whatever, please let us know. We'd love to hear from you. And there are several ways you can contact us. Email at thefellowshipofthegeeks.net is our email address. Or you can go to the website and go to the About Us page, where there's a contact form you can fill out. You can follow us on social media. I already mentioned earlier, we have a Facebook page. Feel free to follow us. And if you're in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, just a reminder about our Meet and Gap on the 13th. There is a Facebook event for that. We're obviously on Twitter as well, at Fellowship Geeks. Feel free to follow us there. And if you'd like, you can follow our personal accounts. Mike can be found at Mikey Geek. Liz can be found at LN_Geek. And I can be found at Tom TC Geek. And wherever you download our episodes, if you could take a couple of moments and just rate and review us, that would be awesome. Greatly appreciated. Any final thoughts before we say goodbye?
Just thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening, everybody. We appreciate your support as always. And until next time, geek on, my friends.
We thank you for listening to the show. Comments, suggestions, and questions can be sent to email@thefellowshipofthegeeks.net. You can follow us on Facebook at The Fellowship of the Geeks and on Twitter at Fellowship Geeks. Until next time,